and the proconsul of the area, who was the father of Trajan, who at that point was not the emperor yet, but future Emperor Trajan. His father was the proconsul of the area, and he dedicated the stadium. It's 1,250 feet in length, and it's built in what they call the Roman style. Later on you can see the depiction right here. It's actually elliptical. It's not oval, it's elliptical, which means that the long sides are kind of pulled out. Great engineering mindset of the Romans. If you sit on a long straight and you're trying to watch a race, or the Geilenkirchen military contingent doing their PT down here, as you may be ordered to do so later on by the chaplain. If you sit on the long stretch and you look to the left and look to the right, you will basically only see your neighbor's head. So they built it in an elliptical shape to give you the better visibility when you're sitting on the straight side of the stadium.
That's nice.
There are other stadiums that are U-shaped, that are open on one end, but the Roman style means that it's curved on both ends. And Cicero, the statesman, was also for a very brief time a resident of Laodicea from 51 to 50 BC, and he mentions that gladiatorial combat took place in Laodicea. And there's indication that some of that probably took place in the stadium, because they found on the far end of the stadium a section like the foundational stones of a rounded section that would have rounded off the backside of the stadium. So more than likely the gladiatorial combat took place right there on that far end of the stadium. But here we're going to talk a little bit about the church in Laodicea and the message to the church in Laodicea. And the first time that the church is mentioned is again when Paul writes to the Colossians in chapter 4 verse 12, when he talks about Epaphras and the zeal that he has for the Colossians, for the people in Hierapolis and the people here in Laodicea. And it could be that maybe Epaphras, as a result of his zeal, came over here just about a 10-15 mile distance to Colossae and shared his faith, and he might have been responsible for getting the early believers going in the city of Laodicea. But if somebody has their New Testament with them and has it open, if one of you could read Colossians 4 verse 15. It talks about Laodicea as well. This is where Laodicea is mentioned. Does anybody...
Give my greetings to the brothers in Laodicea and to Nympha and the church in her house.
Okay. It talks about the church in Laodicea meeting at Nympha's house. That was very common in the 1st and 2nd century, that the meetings of the early believers did not take place in a church building. They didn't have church buildings yet. They met in individuals' homes. And Nympha was the individual who housed the church and facilitated the church in their meetings here in the city of Laodicea. Paul wrote to the Colossians in around 57 AD. So we know that at that point a group of believers was in existence here in Laodicea. It's interesting to look at this archaeologically. Throughout the Roman Empire, in the 1st, 2nd century time context, you find some individual residences, private residences that have been discovered, where you can tell that these people were Christians and that they modified their personal homes to accommodate a growing congregation. You have evidence of walls being torn down, an additional large room being added to the facility to accommodate the group of believers that would meet in that particular individual's home. So that was the 1st century context in which Christians worshipped and Christians met. And then the message to the church in Revelation is from Revelation chapter 3 verses 14 through 22. If we have somebody that would be willing to read that for us. Revelation 3, 14 through 22.
To the angel of the church in Laodicea write, these are the words of the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the ruler of God's creation. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to speak out of my mouth. You say, I am rich, I have acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, Those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. So be earnest and repent. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come to him, come in and eat with him, and he with me. To him who overcomes, I will give the right to sit with me on my throne, just as I overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches.
Amen. Thank you, Jeremy. The one thing that stands out about the Church of Laodicea and the rebuke that the Lord has for them is that they are lukewarm. They're identified as the lukewarm church. And when you look at the location of Laodicea, you find that one of the problems Laodicea had was the fact that they did not have a natural water supply within the city itself. Very large city. You know, we've walked through maybe not even half of the size of Laodicea. 200,000 people roughly living here, but they didn't have their own water supply right here in this city. Colossae had a good cold water supply. We didn't see it yesterday when we were there, but right on the side of the road where the bus parked is a small creek that runs through there. So there's a natural water supply. Where I pointed out the cemetery area, the creek actually runs through a ravine right there, so there's a good water supply there. Yesterday in Hierapolis, we were right next to the beautiful pool where we got